So whenever you're playing Brawl into spam and you know like, hey, they have like a Hanzo, it's like a Hanzo Ash or stacked and they're spamming a shit ton, you can just be like, oh, they're spam comp, so we're gonna use May wall, and you'll wall off their spam and then you'll walk with passive speed, and then once you're close you can amp speed in. And then when you're amping speed, then you can maybe use DM. But so that way you don't have to DM when you're let's say like I'm gonna move this, but let's say like you're playing over here and the enemy team has like their DPS on here, and you're like, okay, we need to close distance. Well, what you can do is maybe you May wall these guys, and then you passive speed and close distance, or you can amp speed if you think you need to. It's just fine. And then once you're over here, then your diva has DM, and your diva can DM soft engage them while your team pushes in. So whenever you play Brawl into Brawl, that's what I'm mainly going to focus on right now. Is there's some basic things that like just happen, or basic situations that happen. So I'm gonna write them down. So the first thing is something called corner to corner, or something called corner to open space. If you guys know this, also let me know. Open space to corner, and there is corner space. Any of you guys know this stuff?
Nope. Is this in terms of taking space?
It's in terms of taking space, yes, and just general positioning and understanding. Charlie, you know this, right?
This is the first mod I ever heard you talk about, by the way.
Yeah.
Like the first one.
Yeah.
I watched this video.
Yeah.
Okay. I will make it go really fast. Okay. I'll probably do it in like 15 minutes. I
need a refresher anyway. I'm pretty stupid. So.
I think you're pretty good. Okay, but yeah. So corner to corner, corner to open space to corner, corner to open space. I'll quickly explain and show what each of these are. So corner to corner is something like here, where you'll have a. I'm gonna delete this. You'll have a. This is a corner. You'll have one Reinhardt playing here and one Reinhardt playing here, and they're sort of fighting each other. Okay, make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That happens quite a lot. It can happen over here. It can happen over here. It can sort of happen over here, right? It can happen over here. It happens all the time. The next one is corner to open space to corner. So we can use this one as an example. There is a corner here. There is some open space, and there is a corner. So like that, like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this happens a lot too. There's another example of this over here. There is a corner here. There is a corner here. Ryan, open space. Okay. Actually, one second. Let me also just at second. All right, there you go. So yeah, so this is another example of, corner, open space. Okay, same thing. Now there's also an example, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen this all the time, but there's a corner here, Ryan's here, and this is open space. Yes, there is a corner over here, but once the enemy team leaves that corner, they're in open space, and this is probably one of the like most annoying chokes to push out of, right? Have you guys ever sort of like played on the attacking team and the enemy team's holding right over here, and it's sort of like really annoying and you get stuck here for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reasoning is because the enemy team has a corner and you're in open space, right? So they can sort of pressure you a lot. And whenever you're in open space, you have to use stuff to take space. I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but you have to use CDs, ultimates, and other things, which an enemy team doesn't have to do anything because they have a corner and they can sort of just chill and live. Okay, shut up, Cap. Alright, so let's talk about some basic situations. So let's say, very normal. You're over here, enemy team Ryan is over here. So what do you do? Where do you rotate? Normally.
Yes.
Shit, sorry, my bad. I was muted. So if the Ryan's on statue and you're attacking.
Yep, you're a little Black X. There you go.
I mean, I guess it depends on the comp, but you can rotate
Mirror.
the tail, try to either flip the map.
Okay, so you're gonna go here, try to flip the map. Okay, where else?
You could go high ground if you have maybe more high ground heroes, and try to.
You're playing mirror brawl. Don't overcomplicate this. Mirror. Simple basics.
Then you can go around statue and use it as like a cover.
Okay, so now when you're here and there Ryan's here, what example is this?
That's you have a corner and he's in open space.
He's in open space.
Technically. Well, I mean, he's behind cover, but
So
his team to be able to see him is kind of in open space.
sure, but still technically a corner. So like sort of, it's a weird corner, but it's a corner. So they have a corner, you have a corner, and there's open space in between. So it's a corner to corner, corner to open space to corner. Okay. So whenever you're in sort of the situation where you have corner, I'm gonna use like just abbreviation. So corner to open space to corner, you have to do something to push past the open space and go into the enemy team. Brawl right now is more of a spam brawl. So spam into brawl. Why is that? Well, when you're playing brawl, you essentially have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 range damage dealers, and Lucio is not as much, but it's still 4 range damage dealers. You only have like 1 or 2 people that are sort of like, you know, hardcore, like close distance type of stuff. So you can always spam, and then from there, that spam, you sort of like force people out or get value, and then you can sort of walk in and brawl. Okay? Any questions on this?
Nope.
Okay, so this is
Are you
why.
streaming?
Yes.
Like to your Twitch?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to ask someone to watch this too.
Okay. So this is why, right? A lot of times we'll talk about it, but this is why whenever you're playing a corner, you have to push up. You have to do certain things, and we've talked about that already. But I'm gonna explain everything. So, now let's say you play here, and the enemy team now is not like you're playing here. So like, and the enemy team is actually playing over here. What would you do now? Yuts.
So you would try to, I would try to take like between statue and hotel and take that. That way, it's a less of open space.
You go here, or you want to go here?
I would rotate. Like I'd
Just
get on the other
one.
side of statue, basically, like back way, the second way, I guess.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Because then you don't have to cover a bunch of open space and you
Yes.
use a bunch of resources.
What's the point of coming over here? Why do you want to get over here? First playing over here.
You have a corner and it's safer for your team to cross because it's less space. You use less CDs.
Yes. So whenever you're playing Brawl in general, we don't really want to like amp speed to close distance. That's sort of a waste of amp. We'd rather amp speed and sort of go through them, or amp speed to kite. So if we're amping speed just to close distance, that sort of sucks. So if there's a rotation we can do to sort of get closer to the enemy, so we don't have to amp speed, we should go with that. So this is one example, X1. Another one, which you guys might know, is sort of flipping the map, doing something like this, right? Or like this, and that normally forces the enemy team to sort of flip the map. That's another way of sort of closing distance. Okay. So now we are over here, and we're chilling over here. Now, let's say we want to push in. Okay. So this is a corner again, open space corner. Now, let's say we push in and we start pressing. What situation does this become when we start pressing? They're over here.
I mean, you kind of have point control if you're.
What are the situations I talked about? You push from.
Like it's then corner to corner once you push.
Okay. Do you agree with this, Blank?
Blink, yes, me.
Blank.
No.
Why not?
Cause I don't get to. Usually, like in a corner would imply that like I could heal my Rhine without them also being able to see me, but it's not really as safe, if that makes sense.
Why?
I don't know. Cause I have to just swing wider.
What do you mean? You have to. So you're right here right now, right? And your Rhine's over here. So what's wrong with this position?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm confused. What were you trying to say before?
I'm just not very safe. I'm just really close.
Okay, so yeah, you can play further back, sure. Okay, that's
well,
fine.
Even there, like I'm not like all that safe, because then I'm not near. Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so what I'd say is, as long as you don't need to be like on your team, but you should be somewhere close to your team. So if someone's flanking or whatnot, your diva can turn and peel you, and your Lucio can peel you. And I'll show you later like what I mean by distance, but you should be. This is like a good distance. You want to be at a distance where sort of again you can sort of just sort of see things, and you can like shoot straight instead of shooting the ground. When you are like somewhere over here, you're forced to shoot the ground, and it's really awkward. So yeah, so this is sort of fine. Technically, what's happening right is let's see here. Black is where you were. Your team was like over here, and then now you're moving from black to green. So now you're over here. Okay. So now you're in this corner to corner situation. Now there's something. Imagine an imaginary line right over here. Okay, so imaginary line. So now let me ask you a question. If you do what I like to call aggro turning the corner, so you turn like this, and now Ryan, you face like this, and then your team plays like this, what happens to their corner?
Becomes open space.
Yes. So now let me ask you this, Charlie. What happens to, or actually not Charlie, Blank. Why is this really beneficial for you as BAP when you aggro turn the corner like this?
I can then do damage and heal at the same time.
Yes, that's right. When you're over here, you can only heal, right? So
Yeah.
now you can do more. But there's also another reason why this is super beneficial. Think about one of your abilities.
Lamp. It allows me to lamp a little bit.
You can lamp a corner,
Like
right?
more to. Yeah.
And they can't really kill
'Cause I know
that.
that they can't take it. Yeah.
Yes. But then what about them? Where do they lamp?
They can lamp on their. I guess right now they couldn't lamp if that was a full wall, but they have like a little hotel thing. To
Yeah. So like if this
tie
was
back
like
into.
flat, like there's nothing in here, right?
Yeah.
Like
then they don't have a lamp spot.
Yeah, it'd be an open space, right? And that's like the important thing to understand here. When you aggressively turn the corner like this, you take the corner from them, and you essentially have a lamp spot, so your Ryan can keep going or stabilize, and they have no lamp spot. Okay, so this is why this is really crucial. Now, the one thing one thing you need to add here is there's a hero that sort of changes a lot of this or adds stuff on. You guys know what that is? What?
May.
Lucio.
May. It's May. Why does
Damn it.
May change stuff here?
Adds corners and blocks off corners
Sure.
and open space.
So
Makes a new corner.
yes, sort of, right? So let's say we push in like this, and then the May just walls off our Ryan, and then we lamp here, but the Ryan's over here. What happens then?
I die.
Our Ryan dies, right? So we have to be a little bit careful of May walls. So when we sort of aggressively turn the corner, if they don't have wall, it's free. If they do have wall, we need to make sure again our May is in a position that preferably isn't like fully stacked with our Ryan, so that if they do wall off our Ryan, our May can counter wall. Okay. But in general, this is like a really important concept because this is how we can force brawls and like essentially put an enemy team at a big disadvantage just by holding space. Well, taking space then holding space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
so is that why like
yeah.
amp is so useful in these
Yes.
engaged situations? Is to
Yes.
get the May wide, and then so your diva
Yes.
can DM that and your Ryan.
Yes. Well, it's because
Gotcha.
so you can amp and you can take the like important space on the map and force the enemy team at a disadvantage. Or sometimes if
Yeah.
you're already here, you can just speed into the enemy team. And instead of just cleaving on
Yeah.
the Reinhardt, you can cleave on squishies. And like if you cleave on
makes
like a
sense.
May that force cryo, and that's huge. So that's like really,
And that-
really, really big.
Also gives your BAP time too, because the person in the comp who has to make the most distance to do this red composition is your
Oops.
BAP. Your BAP has to move the
Yes.
most distance, so that also helps him.
Yes.
Okay, it's making more sense.
Yep, exactly. Okay. So it'd be something like this, by the way. It'd be like, okay, I'm aggressively turning the corner in 3, 2, 1, turn, speed, try and push. And then you've got a corner. Your whole team backline goes from here, like so. As BAP, you'd like rotate like that, and then McCree, you'd sort of go here. Maybe McCree wants to pinch, so your McCree hides in here, comes over here, and then your Ryan pushes in. Your McCree comes here and stuns their Ryan or something. You should blow him up. Okay. So again, this is how you can sort of go from a corner to like a bunch of open space, right? You rotate to get closer, and then again corner to open space, and then you sort of fight a corner to corner fight. Okay. Another example would be, okay, let's first do this. So now, when you're playing this, or the enemy team is here, let me get a better one. Enemy team is here, and you have to push into them. Really sucks. There are a few things you can do to try and make this easier for yourself. Do anyone know what they are?
Just go in that little alleyway on the right.
Okay, so what is that called?
I don't know, better pathing, easier pathing.
Like a rotation, right? But yes, it's like good pathing. And that pathing is why does that pathing work?
Because it gives us less time in the open.
Yes.
It gets us to the corner without taking as much damage.
Yes. But to be more specific, it's a path that essentially is out of their LOS and gets us close to them, right? Like the biggest thing is it's like an anti-LOS of enemy, right? And then it gets us closer. That's like the biggest thing we care about, those two. Okay. So like whenever we're playing like open space into a corner and where we have open space, we can look to maybe do a rotation to try and help us close distance and take less spam. Okay. Then what's another thing we can do? Don't overthink it. Anything's fine.
Use alts to engage, like window.
Alts. We can use, McCree alt and window. Okay. Blinky. What's the third thing we can do?
Use cooldowns.
Yes. What cooldowns are good?
Speed wall.
Okay, we can use speed. We can use Maywall. What else?
Sonic Arrow. If you have a Hanzo.
Sure. I don't think that'll help us necessarily take space, right? It's amps
guess, yeah.
to help us take space. Maywall. Well, don't overthink it. Like really straightforward.
That's not an ult.
CD,
Flash?
DM, yes. DM. One more.
Oh,
That's like really dumb and probably doesn't need to be on here, but it still should be on here.
Shield?
Shield. Yes.
Oh.
Right? Yeah, like I said, pretty dumb, right? So whenever you're playing Brawl into spam and you know like, hey, they have like a Hanzo, it's like a Hanzo Asher stacked and they're spamming a shit ton, you can just be like, oh, they're spam comp, so we're gonna use Maywall, and you'll wall off their spam and then you'll walk with passive speed, and then once you're close you can amp speed in. And then when you're amping speed, then you can maybe use DM. But so that way you don't have to DM when you're let's say like I'm gonna move this, but let's say like you're playing over here and the enemy team has like their DPS on here, and you're like, okay, we need to close distance. Well, what you can do is maybe you may wall these guys, and then you passive speed and close distance, or you can amp speed if you think you need to. That's just fine. And then once you're over here, then your diva has DM, and your diva can DM soft engage them while your team pushes in. So you can sort of like do what you guys already know, but CD layering, right? You can layer CDs to help you take space, and that's very useful. Okay. And if you're playing mirror, right, like then that's fine. You guys already know. Like you don't have to Maywall them. You can sort of just use window and take space. You can use high noon, or in this situation, you can do a nice rotation over here, so you don't have to use any CDs or any ultimates. Get close, get into a corner to corner situation. Say, hey, I want to get to this corner. I want to rotate like this, get to the corner, and then I want to immediately aggro turn the corner with window. And then you window and you just push into them and try and blow somebody up. Okay, does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've talked about corner to corner, talked about corner to open space, and sort of how as open space you can sort of you can deal with it, even though it sucks, right? And then we talked about corner, open space, corner. Okay, so those are the three very basic things, right? If you think about it, this is literally anywhere in any map. Does that make sense? You can put this concept anywhere whenever you're playing Brawl. It should make sense.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Now, two more things I want to talk about that's really important in Brawl. One's I sort of call like baiting, or sort of just like gambling, baiting, sort of just like holding pressure when you really, can't hold, like, or holding space when you can't really hold it, but you're giving the illusion that you can. So I'll give it this way. I know when I give you an example, you guys probably seen this before. Cart's over here, okay? And you have maybe your Diva on cart, because Diva doesn't have a lot of range damage, so Diva makes the most sense. And then the rest of your team is playing this corner over here. Your Ryan's here, your McCree, your Mate, your Lucio. Why do you want Lucio? Because your Lucio can speed you out if needed, and your Bap. Okay. Why are you holding here? I wouldn't say.
Not let them set up.
To not let them set up? Sure. Blank, what'd you say?
Because this is a long sightline and it's really expensive. It's like the example of the other corner that.
So this is a corner to what?
The corner that sucks. It's not a corner to corner. It's just corner to open space.
Yeah, I mean technically over here there's a corner, but the fact of the matter is, yeah, the fact is it's super long, right? And as soon as they leave this corner, they're going to be in open space. So when you hold here and you have 4 ranged people start shooting, they have to use CDs or ultimates. And the best part about this is when they do that, right? What can you do?
Poke them out.
Oh, Blank said poke them out. What do you say, Blinky?
I said back up.
Yeah, you can just passively back up and play this corner now. And now what happens? Maybe they use window to take space, and you just use speed. So you're trading what?
Cooldown for null.
Yeah, and that's quite a good trade, right? And then the enemy team is over here now, and they're at this corner. But guess what? You're at this corner. Where's the cart? By now the cart's probably somewhere over here, right? And they still need a touch point, but they still have more open space to go through. Do you see how this can be very tricky for the enemy team?
Yes.
Okay. Now the other thing I'll even add on top of this, and I think your Diva, Kiki, did it actually on Iconwall. There might be a point where as Diva, you're like, I need to be with the team. We need to win this fight. I need to leave cart and I need to come there. So you can just say like, what, I'm going to come help you guys. That happens here and there, right? Especially if you're at a point where if you win the fight, then you can just come back and push the card and you'll cap. But was another benefit of actually playing here and playing aggressive that not many people talk about. It's really important. What do you guys think that is? Playing up here and shooting at them.
Farming ult.
Yes, absolutely. It's farming ult. Why is that so important?
Because then they already have to trade ults to get space, and you'll get ults.
Yes. Does that make sense to everyone? And I'll give an example in a second.
Yeah.
So in general, when you have 4 people shooting damage, right? That's 4 people building ult. And they have 2 healers. And if they already have window and they already have beat, guess what? Shoot them, because you can build ults for free, and they already have their support ultimates. And even if they don't have their support ultimates, in all honesty, I think Mei ult and beat is way more valuable than a window, right? And beat builds really slowly, so won't really matter. And a lot of the time, if you're shooting shields, because you won't be able to take angles. But this is still something, right? And it's important to sort of have this idea that whenever the fight's over, posture up forward, shield your range healers or range heroes, and just let them spam. Especially your Mei, because if your Mei builds ult like really fast, your Mei is building it almost every fight, or like 1.5 every fight, and their Mei is building it maybe like every 1 fight. That's like huge, right? That's like that can make a difference. Okay. So
so ideally you just push up to like the corner that has the longest sight line.
Yes. So that's one way of playing it, right? Now the other way of playing it is choking out, which is what I forced you guys to do in Eichenwald, which is where you can do it here too, right? You can literally go right over here, play a choke, hard choke, and you can just look to wall. Because whenever you play like this, right? Like let's say I'll even show you the positioning. It'd be something like Ryan, Mei, let's say your BAP's a little further back behind. Crap. Be like BAP, or BAP could be on high ground too. Ryan, Mei, BAP. Who am I missing? Cree maybe over here, or maybe over here. Either or. Okay. But when you're doing this, right? What does the enemy team have to do?
Where
They
am
have,
I?
either high ground or boxes, which depends how you want to play. Lucio, thank you. Probably somewhere around here, just chilling, so you can speed people out if they need to. Thank you. The enemy team has to push through here, right? What's the problem with that? Why is that difficult for them?
We have a wall.
Yeah, you have a wall, right? And this is why like Mei is sort of broken, is because now for them to push out, they have to like wall like this, and when they wall like this, right? You're even then like they still have to push out, and your Mei can always counter wall, and that's even if they get the wall first, and they even see you're holding close. Does that make sense? Because if they don't even see you're holding close, and they just walk out and you wall, it's a free kill.
Yeah.
And so this is called choking out. Okay. So there's 2 ways of playing now.
Something... Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
You'll
go
probably get into it right now.
So there's 2 ways of playing it, right? One way of playing is playing really close and like sort of like playing these chokes. The other way is sort of playing slower, right? Like you can play here, for example, but here this is not as long of a sight line as you said. You're playing a corner, but you're holding space and being aggressive. Whereas like if you play over here, right, then it's different. It's a really long sight line. But yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
So is that like when you play choking out like that? Are you usually having your Mei kind of like not be seen? Like, do you not want your team to be seen?
Yes. Well, preferably your Mei to be seen. Well, here I'll talk about it later. I'll talk about like retakes. But just so you know, like when you're scouting, you normally care about these people. DPS flankers. Ryan, because that's normally where the team plays. Ryan is where the core plays, right? Mei because of Mei walls, and DPS because DPS can maybe flank. Shit ton, right? So these are like the 3 people groups you normally care about. So before an enemy team ever pushes through a choke, the first thing you should always ask yourself is, where is the Mei? Where's the Ryan? Oh, the Ryan's really far back. Okay, cool. Oh, the Mei is right here on this corner. Okay, the Mei's left side, and your Mei just falls off the Mei, and you sort of walk forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Okay, so now, what's the problem with positioning over here, though? Like choking out like this. There's a problem.
The other flank.
Yeah, sure, right? So the other flank, very valid. The situation, so this is like, it's a hard choke, but not really a hard choke. The definition for me of a hard choke, just so you guys know, is like there's only really one way for them to really push through. So like, for example, a really good hard choke is Hanamura, first point. There's only one way for them to push through, and that like sucks. Like, yes, there's that high ground on Hanamura, but like it's still not many people can really do that. So here, this is like a sort of hard choke, right? Because I mean they have this rotation, but like it's so far, like you're sort of gonna notice this enemy team is doing this. So if they go high ground, you're gonna notice enemy teams doing that. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
you can kind of rotate. But that's not actually what I'm getting at. When you played over here, right? You're able to do two things. You're able to poke them, and also later, if you wanted to do something, you could. What's something you could do here?
Leave.
Yeah, you could kite, right? But now when you sort of play this choke right over here, are you able to kite really easily?
No.
You can, but it's really hard, right? Like if you were to kite, you'd have to kite all the way back here, and like it's sort of doable, but it's like difficult. And in general, when your Ryan holds close to like this, and I'll give you a few examples, your teammates understand that you're sort of like more committing to that. And if you lose your Ryan, that's okay. You can always look for trades. I'm not going to too much into that, but like it's not the end of the world. Just because you lose your Ryan, it's not over. Just like when you play ball comp, if you lose somebody, you can still win. Okay, just like same thing in Brawl. Okay, let me give you another example of a hold. Was sort of like this. So here, this is an example of another hard choke, right? And you sort of want to choke them out here. So your Ryan would hold over here, and your Mei would maybe hold with a Ryan. Okay. And then I'm not gonna. There's a whole bunch of different ways your Mei can play. By the way, Mei can also play over here. There's different logic for that, but there's literally a YouTube video you can probably watch and it'll make sense. But when you hold here, right, then your BAP and McCree want to hold here. Do you guys know why your BAP and McCree want to hold here?
They don't have to kite.
So yeah, they don't want to kite. But let me ask you this: do you like playing over here as BAP and McCree?
Hell
Because
no.
you want to shoot stuff.
Yes, you want to shoot stuff, right? Your LOS is inherently better. And normally when you window or when you may wall, you might have an alt too, right? You might have like a window or you might have like high noon. And like if you do it from the same angle as your Ryan, that could be bad. I'll talk about a little bit more why later, but it could be bad because, whenever you window or you high noon, what happens?
They leave that LOS.
The first thing they could do is just back up. They could play a corner and back up. What's the second thing they can do?
Go in.
They could try and DM push through, sure. Not fully what I was getting at. There's something else they can do though. When you window, when the enemy team windows, what's the first thing we normally do?
Wall.
Yes, they could just May wall, right? But if our BAP and McCree are over here and they May wall this, our Ryan's not walled, which means our Ryan can be really aggressive. And in this situation, our May's not wall, which means our May can also wall too.
Okay.
But I'll explain this
Oh.
concept a little bit later. It's a little more advanced, but yeah.
So it does make sense to sometimes be split like that.
Yes. And I'll talk about a high level and some really cool stuff later. But like what I want you to understand from this concept is that here Ryan's holding close, right? For him to kite, where does he have to go? He has to go like all the way back here. That's really hard, right? And like Lucio obviously would be over here, right? And then May's here, and then Diva's sort of like or in the middle. Diva's like always in the middle or on some type of off angle. This off angle is not very good because it's like inside, so yeah. And Diva would always be like soft watching high ground with Lucio. And then your squishes are here. But so I want you guys to get what I'm saying. Like if you guys are choking out, sometimes your Ryan's really close. It's hard to kite. It's still doable, right? You could literally, you're making me like I'm walling them. Let's speed out. You wall them off and you just speed out and you back up. It's doable, right? But it's difficult. Okay. Does this make sense, guys? So you guys understand there's two sort of ways of holding, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like you can sort of bluff it, right, and sort of spam them and like do whatever you want. And also kite. You can also bluff it, hold here, wait for them to walk in, and then just push into them too. By the way, you don't have to kite. And then there's another example here of just hard choking them out, playing this choke and sort of playing like that. Okay. Any questions?
So is this kind of like? Hold on, I'm trying to like digest it all. So is
Yep.
it kind of like there's almost like 3 different ways you can play it?
Yes,
Kind of almost like a
and
standard
let
like
me-
corner to corner.
So remember how I said earlier, there's spam into Brawl.
Yeah.
When you play like this and you're playing slow and they're walking up, what type of comp is that?
That's spam.
Spam. Now when you hold this choke here, what type of comp is that?
And brawl.
Yes. Right. So does that make sense? And like the concept
Yeah.
of you playing here and you sort of kiting back, that's just playing slow. Like it's still quote unquote spam, but it's like still playing slow, just a different it's a different tempo.
Yeah.
It's not, okay. Does that help answer your question in a better way?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. Okay, any questions so far? So again, a lot of information to digest.
What's
Yes.
kind of like my role as far as positioning with BAP
Yeah,
on
I will do that in
either
one
one of these,
second.
'cause
I will go
okay.
into like all the basic positioning. I want to talk about, let me do basic positionings first, and then after that I'll talk about some other cool stuff. Okay, so basic positioning. Okay, I'm not going to go into any advanced things. There's like a lot of cool stuff you can do with positioning, but I'm going to keep it very simple. Okay, when you're playing as BAP, your job is to always play a little further back, and I'll even show you why right now. 1 minute. I'm just gonna do train. Okay, so when you play BAP, so when I was watching you a lot, what you do is you play like this, and then you do this. Now, the problem with this is you are really close to your team, and you have no time to react. Also, your LOS is literally what you see in front of you. Now, if you play like here, now your LOS is much better, right? And you can also see things, so you can react better. Does that make sense? So play a little bit more further back. Okay, now going back to the VOD. Now, when you're playing basic positioning, okay, who do you guys think should actually take Rhine damage in mirror?
Take Rhine damage?
Yeah, like that. Like again, we're playing mirror, so their Rhine team is here. Your Rhine team is here, right? Who and the enemy Rhine swinging on us? Who should actually take damage from their Rhine?
Wouldn't
Our
it
BAP.
ideally be just the Rhine?
Charlie, shut up. Ideally, it should just be your Ryan, right? But the fact of the matter is, sometimes your Mei is like holding close too and like holding angles, and your Mei could be like really good in playing distance. Because I'm actually again, so Mei. But like Diva definitely shouldn't be, right? Your BAP should be really far away. Your Lucio should be playing like wall riding or sort of living. 1 sec, I'm really curious about something. Yeah, so the Mei freeze, by the way, is 10 meters, right? And I'm pretty sure if you get closer, it's like better. If it's further, then it's not as good, right? But it's 10 meters. Ryan's swing is like 5 something, 5.5 or something, right? So technically Mei can like be out of swing range too. But the fact of the matter is sometimes Mei wants to get closer to like, you know, freeze faster. So Mei might take damage as well. Does that make sense? And Diva obviously can play more angles. And Diva shouldn't really be stacked on Ryan, but should always be sort of on a soft off angle. So like Diva could maybe be over here and sort of like, you know, helping Reinhardt from sort of an angle and able to sort of see everything, sort of how you played a lot, Kiki. You were actually insane awareness today. You understood when to peel, you understood when to push forward. It was pretty nuts. Most Diva players I actually see are like fully off tank players. I'm not sure if you're a fully off tank player, but like don't struggle with that. So that was actually really impressive. But like yeah, but like, you know, you sort of just chill and you sort of watch things and you know, you DM your Ryan, help him take space, or you know, you sort of do sort of that. You don't like necessarily like just int in or fly in. You sort of just live and exist. And then your McCree
Is this
flanks.
the Diva?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's Diva.
Sorry.
You're good. And then for McCree, you flank a lot. Because a very simple thing is if you're playing career with the team, what are you doing? You're shooting shields. Is that
Right.
valuable? In Brawl,
No.
like how often does your shield break in Brawl? When you're actually brawling.
When you're actually brawling, not much.
Yeah, so if we're brawling here, it's pretty useless, right? So it's much better if our Kree is actually like flanking and maybe like he comes on the side here and he's like poking the enemy BAP and like maybe 2 taps the BAP. That's huge. We killed our BAP. We're up. Right? He comes over here, maybe shoots a Lucio, kills a Lucio. Maybe he doesn't kill anyone, but he makes everyone look at him. And everyone starts looking at him, and when that happens, our Ryan, like our Kree says, "I'm flanking," and like you know, the whole enemy team starts looking at him, and our Ryan's like, "Yeah, awesome," and then our Ryan just pushes forward into them and runs over their Ryan because their BAP's distracted and doesn't heal their Reinhardt or something, right? So and obviously, yes, like you know, your Kree could get matched by a Diva, and that's when your Diva you can ask your Diva to come play with you to help you out more, and you'll win that, or your BAP can like help you out a little bit more, who's like over here, because your BAP's sort of in a position where your BAP can help your Ryan and your Kree. Right, that's why I want you to play further back, so you sort of are able to see things more blank.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
if you're flanking a lot and the Diva's just hard marking you, you can just say, you know what, screw it, I don't need to flank anymore. I'm just gonna play back with the Ryan and maybe look for stun value or like you know just sort of like play for that. It's not as good, but still something, right?
Okay.
But that's an
So-
adaptation. Yeah.
So do I just have to make like kind of like the call to I don't know even just like if I'm playing further away from my Rhine, I'm obviously not going to get as much shield except for, like from their core, so I'm more vulnerable to flankers.
But what
just 'cause
flankers
I
are
know
there?
There's not going to be any besides Kree.
Yes, and who do you think Diva should be marking?
Probably Kree.
Yes, there you go. Right?
Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense.
Yes, perfect. And then May's here.
So as long as I'm just like babysitting that a little bit more,
Yes.
and then okay,
yes,
then I
yes.
can play. Okay.
Yep. And when this is Brawl Mirror, when you play against like let's say Ball Comp with like 2 flankers, like they have Tracer Sombra, Ball Diva, then like try and play a little bit closer to your team, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But your Diva and Lucio should help you peel. Like you know your Diva will help you rotate and help you move and stuff, and your Lucio should help deal with flankers as well. Okay.
Gotcha.
Something else. Okay. A little higher level, but you can do mini dives in Brawl. I'm just gonna like talk about it. I don't expect you to do this, but you can do mini dives. Like, so the reason why a lot of Kreese and Ulta don't flank is because sometimes a Diva Lucio see it, and when a Diva Lucio sees it, you wanna know what they do?
Sorry.
They call it and say, "Go fuck the Kree."
Yes, exactly. Right. They literally that. They'll be like, you'll be like, hey, the Kree's flanking. He's open space. Can you go? And like Lucy's like, yeah. And then they just int on the Kree and just annihilate the Kree. Because Kree's a non-mobile target that we've talked about before, right? That has no livable CDs. And if you just go on him, you can kill him. Or maybe a Force Lamp, which is really good. Another hero on Brawl is what? Oh, this is not fully Brawl. May app. What's another hero besides Kree?
Bap.
Yes, BAP,
Asher.
right? BAP. That's why somebody's playing distance is really good, because if you're too close, you could just die. But as long as you're like close to your team that they can peel you, and like, you know, you're not, if you're really far and out of position, enemy team will be like, hey, do you see that BAP, Lucio? Can you go with me? And she's like, yeah. And like, what'll happen is maybe like the Diva will go and Lucio will boop the BAP up in the air. Diva will try and like roll the BAP in the sky with like rockets and something. Okay, again, really high level. Not done too much because people know how to like peel it now and position better. But like also in this SR, if you do that, I guarantee you'll get a lot of value. But does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's basic stuff. Okay, that's like basic positioning. Now, in terms of something else, like basic neutral. Okay, but basic neutral's the first fight with no ultimates. Whenever you're looking to like fight, right? You can ask Bubbles this, or sorry, Yuts this. Well, same thing. When you're pushing a Reinhardt, right? Let's draw the Rein over. You want to try and push from angles. If you're all sort of swinging at him the same way, he'll just sort of chill there and swing back. But when you actually push a Reinhardt and let's say your Rein goes main, and then your Mei sort of comes from an angle and starts freezing like this, and then maybe your McCree's over here and your Diva's like over here, for instance, what happens to this Reinhardt?
He can't look all directions, so he
cries.
gets blown up.
He cries, right? And so when we push sometimes we can do this pinch. So it's a very simple pinch play. It's just like, let's just sort of surround him and pinch him. And he can't do anything, right? And this is an open space, so it's a lot harder. But let's say if we had point control, I'm just gonna delete this. Let's say we had point control, for instance, and their enemy team is rotating through here, and their Ryan walks up, and our Mei, for instance, is over here, our Ryan is over here, and then our DPS are over here. What happens to their Reinhardt now?
He gets.
He takes a
forced
lot
back.
of damage from a lot of places.
Yeah, that Ryan's not going to be happy. He can't shield all that, right? And obviously, yes, maybe the Diva will like say, "Oh, I'll DM main," right? Or like, I'll pressure the Reinhardt or something. But like, it's not enough, right? It's very difficult. So in neutrals, you can, when you're playing Mei and you're sort of like, you know, you're going and pushing with the Reinhardt, don't just sort of like walk up to him and just sort of freeze him. You take an angle, and when you take that angle, that makes it hard because Reinhardt has to essentially start shielding more that way, right? And then your Reinhardt is able to push into them. Okay. But now this goes into my next question of who should be denying Mei. Because if we deny Mei, then our Ryan sort of has more space, right? So who do you guys think should be denying Mei? Charlie, don't say anything.
Oh shit, I don't even know.
Wait. Kree.
Kree? But Kree's on the flank, so how is Kree gonna mark Mei? Because if our Kree is over here, whoops, over here,
Wait,
shooting
is
things.
it Lucio?
Yes, it's Lucio. Why do you think it's Lucio?
Because he can boop.
Yes, exactly, right? So whenever like your Lucio's on this high ground, right? Whenever the enemy Mei tries to push in on something, our Lucio can just try and boop the Mei away. Okay? And then the Mei
Right.
gives more space to our Reinhardt, and that's good. Our Lucio can also boop people into our team as long as our team's ready for it. He can maybe Lucio boops the Mei into our team. What's the Mei gonna do? Probably instantly cryo, right? You can boop the Ryan in or something. Ryan's gonna be like shit. So make sense, guys?
Yeah.
So you can boot people
Totally.
away or boot people in. Okay, so now we sort of talked about, you know, Lucio's role. We talked about Mei's role with the off angles and calling walls. One other thing that's really important is, let's say the enemy team Ryan is like over here. Okay, do we want to wall this guy? Like he's over here. Do we want to wall him here if we're over here?
No,
No.
that's a lot
No,
of
it's a bit
distance,
far.
and
It's too far, right? So like if we wall him, it's gonna take ages for us to walk up, and then we have to use amp speed as well, right? So it's not worth it. Like if the Ryan's this far, let's just naturally walk up a little bit. Even though yes, it is open space. Their Ryan's an open space too. But let's naturally walk up, and then we can look for a wall, and then we can speed in and get value. Okay. So Lucio, like I said, managing the amp speed, using amp when we're like close enemy team, trying to go through them, or even amping out. Oh, they window. I'm speeding out, right? Using boop to sort of essentially deny Mei. And also pressuring doesn't shoot shields, but pressures maybe Diva or pressures BAP or does stuff like that. Does mini dives with Diva. Again, don't worry about that right now, but that's the thing. Diva plays off angles, looks to always mark flankers if they have Tracer or whatever it is, but in Brawl Mirror, you're normally watching Kree flanks, okay? And in the start of fights, you're sort of like in a middle place where you can DM for your Ryan to help him take space and sort of swing. Yeah, you're sort of existing on an off angle and applying a lot of pressure. Your rockets can be used on Mei to try and force cryo, or just sort of like off angle rockets and to pressure people. Okay, and then create your off angling, not too crazy. Just try and save some CDs to like live. So if Diva goes on, you can roll back, right, and maybe stun or something. Not too complicated. BAP, you're playing back. You're just trying to keep everyone in your sight lines. You're trying to heal. Don't over heal. You have 10 shots, right? So if you're like healing before the fight starts, make sure you reload before the actual fight starts. So you have actual 10 bullets for the fight. And use shift when the actual brawl starts, so you get more value out of your shift. And then Ryan, I think it's pretty straightforward. For you, the biggest thing is understanding the corners you're playing, and when we actually push, you're pushing from the corners into open space. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, anyone have questions about neutrals? Like very basic neutrals? All right. But quickly summarize, right? We talked about like shorthand. We talked about corners to corners. Talked about corners to open space to corners. Talked about corners to open space, right? Then we talked about sort of like choking, and we talked about sort of like spamming, right? Like holding a corner, and then maybe like you can also kite if you want to. And then